And away we go. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome one and all to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. We'll take a look at some clips from the news, share a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. And if you happen to be listening anywhere else and you wanted to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk, and on Prepper University. That's at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta, and Rumble. You can find me on Rumble also, and that is Coffee Talk 2 on Rumble. Coffee Talk 2 on Rumble. But if you are watching live on Rumble, I cannot see your comments because Restream doesn't roll that way. Hopefully the audio is better today. Yesterday we had apparently some issues with the audio through Restream because Restream can't get anything right, which is why I'll be switching back to StreamYard as soon as I'm able to. It ain't cheap, folks. It ain't cheap. So I thank those of you who were able to stick it out with me through some audio issues yesterday. I'll go ahead and read through some of the comments and see who's joining us here today. See, Jimmy is here. And Puck, who says their comments are disappearing. Interesting. Tuck is here. Helter. Bob Smith. Dragon. JD. Brian. Joe Doe, Stacy, saying hello today. D-Lo from California. Kimberly has joined us. Peter is here. And D-Lo says, thumbs up, please do. And they want to know what microphone I'm using. You know, I've swapped several microphones, and there's always problems. It's always problems. I don't remember what model the one that I have right now is. I don't know. I don't know what model that one is specifically off the top of my head. I don't remember. But I've gone through about 4 or 5 of them, and they all sound the same. They all sound the same. It'd be nice if I had a really high-grade microphone, but it is what it is. Again, nobody's paying me to talk. This isn't NBC here. It's just me running my mouth on the internet, on the podcast, and fingers crossed, and that's how it is. Being joined today by Miss Kitty, sleeping in the chair in the background. I think a lot of it primarily has been Restream. We switched from StreamYard to Restream, and I found it to be far more buggy. So I'll go back to StreamYard when the contract is. It's a year contract. It's about 500 or so, 500 plus. But as alluded in the thumbnail, elephant in the room, there was a aircraft disaster. There was an American Airlines jet and a military helicopter that collided. And there is a lot of conspiracy to go around with this one. And Peter says could be settings in the software you're using. I don't know, because we didn't have these issues with StreamYard. It wasn't this bad. It wasn't this bad. We get into the first article, and I've got some interesting points about this. After we take a look at the articles. And Joe reminds us, yeah, the helicopter flew right into the plane, says Joe. Correct. There are plenty of conspiracy to go around, but I'll read the general story and then we'll take a look at some other points about it. So, New York Post article, rescue effort turns to recovery after American Airlines jet carrying 60 collides with military chopper. My understanding is it's a total of 66 people. Is that correct? At least 28 bodies have been pulled from the icy Potomac River after a Blackhawk helicopter collided midair with a commercial plane, splitting it in half near Reagan International Airport in Virginia on Wednesday. Flight 5342, a PSA Airlines bombarder, CRJ 700 regional jet operating for American Airlines and traveling from Wichita, Kansas, collided with the military chopper approaching runway 33 at the Washington airport at around 9 p.m. And that's the FAA. It's 67. 7 people aboard the jet are now believed dead. I would think so. I don't expect them to find anybody alive. I'll be surprised if they can even recover all the bodies. Just being honest, a flowing river, it's winter. Yeah. So all 67 people aboard the jet are now believed dead, officials said Thursday morning. About 300 first responders and divers are a part of an active search of the Potomac, which is a perilous 35 degrees. For the 60 passengers and 4 crew members aboard the American Airlines flight and the 3 soldiers that were traveling in the military chopper, with first responders recovering the remains of more than 30, according to sources. Okay. And it says no survivors have been found. Officials did not confirm the recovery of any passengers on either aircraft at a press conference. And a quote here from American Airlines: "Our concern is for the passengers and crew on board the aircraft. We are in contact with authorities and assisting with emergency response efforts." And I think they can show the video clip here. I'll play the video clip if it'll without any interruption. Waiting on you. Let's go. See your 2 lights. But I guess they got to give that graphic content warning. I don't know if there's audio there. You see the red circle moving toward the bigger bright light as another aircraft is taking off, and that one is coming down, and it keeps going, and pow, and drops. There's no audio on this clip, but there is voice recording only from the tower. It isn't exactly what I would call graphic content. That's a bit of exaggeration. I'll run that again. Red circle is the helicopter coming across. It looks like one plane's taking off, they're coming down, and bang. And then it drops. And there's a lot of technical jargon. If you listen to the audio recording, most people don't get much out of the audio. Let me close this. It's interfering with. A lot of people aren't going to get much out of the audio because it's a lot of technical jargon and a lot of numeric response coming from the tower, but not getting anything back as far as I could discern from the helicopter. It's like they weren't answering. And, he's calling out numbers, and basically what he's saying in layman's terms is, hey, don't you see that plane? Where are you going? Because that helicopter was actually coming across from a very small military base on the other side of the Potomac, closer to the Pentagon side. Peter says it sounds like there could be a compression issue with the audio. And Armored is here. He says crisis of competence. Peter says the corporate media will use this to distract from things they don't want you to see. Will be back-to-back reports. Yes. And Brian wants to know if it's staged. I don't think it's faked, but was it set up? There's a lot to be considered here. Armored says no graphic content at all. People have become too soft. Yeah, it's not graphic content because you don't see anything. Like I said, it's just 2 lights, and that's just one of the cameras, very likely. I mean, there's a lot of surveillance. Now, they're giving Trump a very hard time with this. We're going to get back to this in a moment because it is really interesting. But there is a lot of heat coming on Trump right now, and I'm going to bring up a few points about the crash itself in a moment. Some stuff that you won't find on the in the news. This is a article, and it says Donald Trump fuels conspiracy theories over the Washington plane crash. Not really. It says Donald Trump has said that the Washington plane crash was preventable in a social media rant questioning why the helicopter traveled straight at the airplane for an extended period of time. Many are feared dead after an American Airlines passenger jet collided with a U.S. military Blackhawk helicopter before crashing into the Potomac River at 8:47 p.m. It says at least 64 people were on board when the jet came in to land at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport when it was struck by the Sikorsky H-60 Blackhawk helicopter. Sikorsky is the manufacturer. It comes just 1 week after President Trump fired all members of key aviation security panel. You can't blame that, because that doesn't mean that the people that, I mean, they say that kind of ominously, that he fired people from key aviation security panels, but that doesn't mean that towers, that people working in the towers, air traffic controllers and such, aren't doing their jobs. It says the committee, which was in Scotland in 1988, does not have any members examining safety issues at airlines and airports. I don't know why they're telling us that. Okay. Helicopter was going straight at the airplane for an extended period of time. It's a clear night. The lights on the plane were blazing. Why didn't the helicopter go up or down or turn? Why didn't the control tower tell the helicopter what to do instead of asking if they could see the plane? And this is Trump talking. This is a bad situation that looks like it should have been prevented. It's not good. What a terrible night this has been. God bless you all. That's not fear-mongering, and that is not fueling conspiracy theories. To ask the question, why didn't it move? Why didn't it change its course? How could he not see it? It's very, very it's very well lit. It's very well lit out there. It wasn't that dark anyways, but you know, all the airports are very bright. The plane was clearly very well lit up. You saw that image. The helicopter had lights. Kimberly suggests we keep hearing different things about who was on the plane. And Puck says Hilo pilot was doing a night flying qualification. I haven't heard that one. Savage says air traffic controller, they're good. I'm going to lunch. No, it's so heavily regulated. It's almost inconceivable that something like that could happen. Honestly, it's so heavily regulated and so heavily watched and monitored and controlled. Air traffic nowadays, it's inconceivable that that could happen. Raccoon has joined us. Now, theories abound, of course. Why didn't they respond to the tower? Which one possibility, and was alluded to here by Puck, helicopter and plane were on different frequencies. But with an a base being like right there that has its own air traffic, I would assume that the tower would be able to communicate with anything coming in or out of that separate airbase. There's a small military base right there. I would assume that they would have that the airline tower, Reagan Airport, would have the ability to contact them or at least send them a signal, or at least signal the other tower or something. Kimberly suggests a helicopter malfunction if they weren't answering. Possibly. Could they have not been in control at all? Conspiracy theory time. Could it have been remote piloted? Was there actually anybody on that aircraft? Stick that one in your hat. That's a theory that I've heard, that it could have been remotely taken over, or perhaps no one was even in there. Because my big question, and it's a question that I have not seen answered yet, who was on the plane? All I've heard about, you got 60 passengers. All I've heard about is a couple of figure skaters and their coach. Who else was on that plane? Were they transporting Diddy on that plane? Who was on the plane? Was there anyone prominent on that plane that would make you question, okay, what the hell's really going on? Is there anybody prominent on that plane that would make you stand up and take notice and say, what a coincidence that that person went down? Now, this is where it's going to get really interesting. They're not going to be able to fully investigate this. Here's the part that they're not going to tell you in the media. Now, they said it's a Sikorsky H-60, okay? Now, Sikorsky, of course, is the manufacturer of the Blackhawk. There are not seven, but several different types of Blackhawk helicopters, okay? Including the Lima, which is what this was. This was a Sikorsky H Lima Blackhawk. It's an older model. It's an older model helicopter that's no longer in production. Okay? It's no longer in production. And Joe says lots of Kansas politicians use that flight. Yeah, it's coming out of Wichita. Most Kansas politicians are going to be situated in Topeka, though. So I would assume they would go to Kansas City. There is an airport in Topeka. It's a small airport, though. You're not going to land a large jet there. But there is a small airport in Topeka. But the Sikorsky H Lima, or Lima, does not have data recording. In layman's terms, there's no black box on a Lima. So no recording of the crew in the cockpit, and there will be no transcription of technical data from the recovery of that crash. The only black box they will find will be the one from American Airlines. That chopper does not contain data. Look it up. The Sikorsky Lima class Blackhawk does not support data recovery. There's nothing. They won't find anything. All they have is any outside recordings. That's all I've got. Peter says there have been daily events caused by air traffic control on record, so not unreasonable to question them. The quality of air traffic controllers has been dramatically reduced since DEI. I bet so. And Joe says a Kansas Congress member said he asked American Airlines to create that flight last year. I would just charter a flight out of the one in Topeka and then just cross over from another airline, because it's easier than running either to Kansas City or Wichita, for sure. The drive alone. Kimberly says, I wondered if they had a black box in the helicopter. Nope, not that model. It's an older model. It's no longer produced. There are several that have been updated to keep them active in the fleet. But the Sikorsky H Lima does not record data. So they can't get the technical data, and they can't get any voice from the cockpit, from the pilots. All they'll have is whatever information they have from the other sources. They can, of course, the airline flight will have a recording. It'll have a flight recorder. They've got whatever they've got from their tower and whatever they can get from the military base's tower. But aside from that, no data from that helicopter, but the helicopter is the problem. The helicopter is the one that did not stop, did not respond, and beelined what looks like right into the side of the other aircraft, because they said it split it in half, T-boned it, effectively killing everybody. Joe wants to know what part of Kansas I was in. I was in Topeka. And Peter says another F-35 crashed the other day, also at an airfield. But I don't think that Trump is necessarily fear-mongering or fueling conspiracy theorists by suggesting that it probably could have been preventable. I don't think he flat out blamed anybody. Did he? Because Puck suggested that he was assigning blame. Did he actually name anybody or blame anybody specifically? I'm not sure that he did. But yeah, it's all pretty highly suspicious. I think it's an interesting coincidence that it's an aircraft. Like I said, foil hats on. You can speculate all you want, but whatever. Not telling you what to think. It is, to me, an interesting curveball that this would be an aircraft that does not have flight recording that was in this collision. A military aircraft colliding with a civilian aircraft of that magnitude. And again, I'm waiting to see who else was on this flight. I think that's the key question here. Besides the figure skaters, again, I've heard there was some professional figure skaters and their coach. Who else? Who else was on the plane? Well, Puck says it seems like he was blaming the helicopter. Well, I mean, between the two vehicles, the helicopter was the one that was out of position, cutting across that way. But anyways, and Joe says he just said Obama embedded DEI air traffic controllers. Did he? Did he say that? I didn't hear that. It wouldn't surprise me. Although we've had more of that during the Biden administration than we did during the Obama administration. It's just gotten worse and worse over the years. Pretty much. It's gotten worse and worse over the years. And there's so much going on in the news. I mean, this was the main chunk of the news, or the elephant in the room, as it were, which is why I wanted to go ahead and address it. And again, I wasn't sure if anyone else was aware that the Lima does not have a flight recorder. There's no black box. So like I said, they're not going to get the whole story. They're not going to get that whole story. Unfortunately, they may not get the whole truth out of it, which shouldn't surprise anybody in today's day and age. Shouldn't surprise anybody in today's day and age. Unfortunately. Now, I've got a video clip here, and this is Donald Trump. It's not talking about the flight, but talking about money being recovered, and his addressing the concept, or that he's robbing Medicaid and Social Security. And I'll go ahead and run this really quick. Let me know how it sounds.
And somehow, for whatever reason, created Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid have not been affected by any action we're taking in any way, shape, or form. We are merely looking at parts of the big bureaucracy where there has been tremendous waste and fraud and abuse. In that process, we identified and stopped $50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. 50 million. And you know what's happened to them? They've used them as a method of making bombs. How about that? We stopped an attempt to make an illicit payment for illegal alien resettlement. We canceled $181 million in DEI training contracts. This is just for the training of people in DEI, which has been terminated and completely terminated. And we paused $1.7 billion in unauthorized payments to foreign organizations, including stopping more than $40 million that was on its way out the door to the very corrupt World Health Organization, which has not done its job and not done it properly. We also...
Yeah, nobody likes the WHO. I don't know why they get so much money.
We also blocked $45 million for diversity scholarships in Burma. 45, that's a lot of money for diversity scholarships in Burma.
Yeah, why are we sending money to Burma for them to have DEI scholarships? That makes no freaking sense. That makes no freaking sense. As we are here. Oh, I see. Joe says RFK Jr. called out Bernie for receiving millions for Big Pharmacy. Yeah, do you see the meme I put up today on Coffee Talk and on Twitter? Because the two people that were giving him the hardest time, Bernie Sanders and 10 Little Indians there, are the ones that have received the most soft money from pharmaceutical lobbyists. Millions and millions of dollars in funding from lobbyists from pharmaceutical companies. And Bernie and what's her name, the Indian chief, are the ones that gave him the hardest time. They're the ones that have made the most. They're the ones that made the most. Joe says condoms are haram, can't grow worldwide caliphate on birth control. Yeah, they don't use them for that. And Paul is here from New Jersey, says, love the channel. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. But that was Trump's answer to the media saying that he's slashing or shutting off Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare, which evidently has not been touched. And he gave some examples of places where they were stopping money: $181 million in DEI training contracts, $50 million worth of condoms for Hamas, $45 million for diversity scholarships in Burma. Burma, have you? Oh my! You want to know what Burma is really like? Anybody? Go watch. Oh, what is it? Go watch Rambo 4. The fourth Rambo. Okay, go watch Rambo 4. That takes place in Burma, and it's probably the most accurate film you'll ever see using Burma as a backdrop. The place is a jungle murder hellscape. And Monkey says Elizabeth Warren. Thank you. 10 Little Indians and Elizabeth Warren, or 1/10 Little Indian. 1/100th, 1/33rd Little Indian. I forget. Oh, and Puck says they remember seeing videos of discarded piles of LGBT educational material laying around in Afghan government buildings when the Taliban took over. That's why they were able to take over so easily, I'm sure, because nobody wants that. Because nobody wants that. And Peter wants to know, are they still sending aid to Israel? It was already against U.S. law to provide Israel aid. I don't know. I don't know if they are. I do not know. In addition to this, while we're on the subject of air travel, I don't know if anyone has caught this in the news because a lot of stuff's getting overshadowed. And this is going to be a CNN article. This is embarrassing. Elon Musk says SpaceX will rescue the 2 stranded astronauts. In a post on the social media platform X, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk claimed Tuesday the Biden administration left 2 astronauts stranded and said that Trump had asked SpaceX to step in and rescue them. NASA already put such a plan in place months ago when it asked SpaceX to return astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore from the International Space Station as part of its Crew 9 mission. A delay in that plan was then announced in December because mission teams said they needed more time to prepare a new SpaceX vehicle. The POTUS asked SpaceX to bring home the two astronauts stranded on the space station as soon as possible. We will do so, Musk posts. It's terrible that Biden administration left them there for so long. And President Trump reiterated the remark, saying the two brave astronauts who had been virtually abandoned in space by the Biden administration. They've been waiting for many months on the space station. Elon will soon be on his way. Hopefully, all will be safe. Good luck, Elon. For comment about the ambiguous declarations from Musk and Trump, NASA replied that it's expeditiously working to safely return the agency's SpaceX Crew 9 astronauts, as a move that, in the agency's words, will take place as soon as is practical. And I didn't realize that there were astronauts even stranded up there, stuck in space. Are you going to get them? Are you going to get them? They don't have any money left for it. DEI programs. NASA spent a fortune. They were all in. Joe says CNN is as honest as the propaganda in the USSR used to be. That's most of them. Yeah, you can't fully trust any news media outlet. And Cyberjack Sr. has joined us. All I can do is read the stories. While we're still on the subject, I thought this was interesting. This was brought up the other day in the comments section. This was brought up the other day. This is Donald Trump. Daily Express. Donald Trump announces a plan to send 30,000 illegal migrants to Guantanamo Bay. Well, I'll point out what I think is really interesting about this story. Article reads, President Trump announced Wednesday that he plans to issue an executive order for a massive new facility at Guantanamo Bay to hold deported undocumented immigrants. The order will instruct the Department of Defense and Homeland Security to create a migrant facility to host 30,000 people suspected of being in the U.S. illegally in that facility. Guantanamo Bay is a facility on a U.S. military base in Cuba that opened in 2002 and is notorious for housing terror suspects in the aftermath of 9/11. Quote, we have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. So he wants to send hardline criminals there. Quote again, some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back. So we're going to send them out to Guantanamo. This will double our capacity immediately, and tough. It's a tough place to get out of. Currently, 15 prisoners are being held at the detention facility, according to the Pentagon. The base also boasts a separate facility for housing migrants, according to the New York Times, which was reported in September. The announcement was made at a bill signing ceremony for the Lake and Riley Act, which calls for the detention of undocumented immigrants accused of certain crimes, including theft. It comes amid President Trump's crackdown on immigration, as officers carry out raids across the country, leaving some migrant workers too fearful to show up at work, disrupting key industries. I read an article on that. That's an exaggeration, because they said, 75% of the migrant pickers didn't show up for harvesting in like California or whatever. And then I read later on that was grossly exaggerated, that they basically made it up. Those people are documented. They have paperwork for migrant farming. So nobody's going to round them up and kick them out. It didn't happen. Basically, those stories were not true, but they reiterate that in this article. Again, it's not true. It's not true, at least not right now. What I find really interesting about this is that they're suggesting that they have space for 30,000 people in Guantanamo, and that currently there are only 15 people being held there. 15. How much does it cost to run that facility? How much? How much do you think it costs to run Guantanamo Bay? And they got 15 people there. Puck says it's true SpaceX was asked to retrieve the two astronauts when Boeing spacecraft failed after delivering them. JJ suggests the astronauts have been stuck up there for a while. Too bad they couldn't catch a ride back with the Russians. Yeah, once upon a time they could have, but not right now. Joe says lots of Mexican nationalists keep parading around with their Mexican flags saying they built America. But if they think Mexico is so great, why don't they go back? If they think Mexico is so great, why don't they speak Mayan or Aztec instead of Spanish? Because that's the language of their conquerors. Puck says, Hedgeth says they have space to accommodate 30,000. And I find that fascinating that there's obviously there has to be more staff at Guantanamo than there are prisoners if there's only 15 people there. 15? 15. I mean, seriously. What a oh my God. What a waste. What a waste of resources. No wonder he wants to ship them there. And I understand what he's suggesting also, to ship the worst of the worst that are coming from places around the world where they may not be detained when they get off the airline, places in the Middle East, places in Africa, where somebody who's guilty of murder might get off the plane and they're like, hey, how you doing? And not even care. Not even care. Joe says he's surprised Biden didn't send the J6ers there. And Puck says there were no Mexicans at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And Jericho, that's what I was saying. Didn't Spanish originate from Spain? Yes. Remember, all those territories from the bottom up were conquered at one point by Spain. The Aztecs and the Mayans and all of those cultures were eradicated by the Spanish. One of the main reasons for that eradication was because of their barbaric practices. They were very heavily into human sacrifice. They were very heavily into human sacrifice. There's accounts of hundreds of thousands of skulls stacked in their major cities. And they were like, oh, these people are nuts. Let's just get rid of them. And it wasn't hard. Plus, there was a lot of greed involved, too, because there was gold to be had. So naturally, there's always that love of money. But yeah, Mexico was a Spanish territory until the Mexican Revolution. But they still speak the language. They still speak the language. They speak the language of their conquerors, but they're mad at us. While we're on the subject of prisons, here's a business opportunity for President Trump. I'm gonna pass this on. Trump, are you watching? I know he isn't. He's not watching. He'll probably never hear of me. Here's a business opportunity for President Trump. Reuters article: Sweden eyes sending inmates abroad as prisons are full due to gang crime waves. Well, they have more criminals than they have places to put them, and they want to start franchising. They want to start franchising incarceration and get them out of the country and lock them up somewhere else. Sweden can send criminals to serve their sentences in prisons abroad, a government-appointed commission said on Wednesday, as the country struggles to handle an influx of new inmates arising from a wave of gang crime. Gee, I wonder what kind of gangs we're talking about. I wonder what countries they came from. Quote, there is a need to work with new solutions within the prison and probation services, says Justice Minister Gunnar Strömer at a news conference, saying that Sweden was already in talks with other countries about renting space in the prisons. Sweden has been plagued by gang crime that has escalated over the last 2 decades, I bet, and has seen the Nordic nation top the rankings of deadly gun violence per capita in Europe. Armed with new legal tools and increased personnel and funding, Swedish police have made headway against the gangs. There have been fewer deadly shootings and more convictions over the last 2 years. Again, I want to know, are we talking about Swiss gangs? Are we talking about Vikings? Or are they from the Middle East or Africa? Someone want to clue us in on that in the comment section? Where do you think these gangs are from? It would be cheaper for them to use barges than to rent space in other countries. That's going to get expensive, even just the travel time. Oh, man. And Puck reminds us the French also occupied Mexico for a while. Yes. Oh, man. Let's go. Joe says Mexicans often complain about European colonizers when in reality they are from Spain. Joe says all the Nordic countries are Islamic states, with maybe the exception of Finland. I've seen videos of Sweden, and there are tens of thousands of Muslims that are being imported, and that means that Sweden is cooked. Yes. Puck says gang crime waves is incorrect. It's cultural enrichment. I agree. And then Joe says same crime they have in Italy, France, Belgium, Denmark, Sweden, UK, all imported Africans, Muslims. And I'm sure that's what it is. I'm sure that's what it is. Sweden let them all in. Now they can't handle it. And can they get rid of them? If they wanted to, they should. Hopefully they'll take a nod from what's going on in America right now. Pakistan did it. I'm going to keep going back to it. Nearly 2 million illegal Afghan aliens kicked out in 30 days. Pakistan. And they're Muslim too. They were like, we don't want you here, which I can't blame them, because the majority of the terrorist attacks that take place in Pakistan, which are frequent, are Afghani illegal immigrants. So they said, all right, if you're not a citizen here, get the hell out. And they enforced it, and they were successful. It says Sweden's jails and prisons are full, and the Prison and Probation Service says it needs about 27,000 more. Oh, no. That's just not going to work. That is not going to work. It says authorities have also been grappling with an unprecedented spate of bombings, primarily in Stockholm. In January alone, there have been 30 bombings. Have you seen that in the media? 30. Why is no one talking about this? Sweden needs to kick them all out. And as I had jokingly suggested, jokingly suggested, maybe they could send him to Guantanamo, and Trump can rent those beds out, make a few dollars. But yeah, they'd be better off using prison barges, like they do that in New York. Do they still do that in New York? Joe says Indians now own more property in London than the native English. And Monkey says in Germany, they narrowly passed to close the borders to asylum, and now the opposition party is trying to ban the AfD party. Ridiculous. And one more here. We'll move on a little bit. All People says an overflow of gangs, crime, prison, industrial complexes, and out of wedlock birth rates is exactly what also happened to the U.S. after a mass migration post 1965. And JJ wants to know, is it the fault of the Swedish government or was this imposed on them by the EU? It's both of their faults because the Swiss government allowed themselves to be manipulated by the EU because the EU will funnel more money to you if you have an open border policy. And they're trying to manipulate Poland this way right now. They're trying to get Poland to open up its border. Poland doesn't want to. We read the articles last year during the Polish elections that they're offering billions of euros for cooperation. And Poland's like, I don't know. I don't know. Don't do it, Poland. Don't do it. Don't do it. Incredible. Incredible as we shift around here. But yeah, I mean, that's going to cost Sweden a fortune. It'd be cheaper, just like in the United States, cheaper to deport them than to support them. I had to put that on a t-shirt. It is cheaper to deport them than it is to support them. Yes, indeed. I had to put that on a t-shirt and market it. Cheaper to deport them. Incredible. But that's what it's come down to. And Tuck says, welcome to Planet Money Launder. I know it. Money launder and industrial complexes, migrant industrial complex, public school industrial complex. Incredible. But a bit of good news. This leaves one case. One case. NBC News. Although the New York case with Alvin Bragg is going to be appealed, where the so-called hush money case, where Trump was found guilty, but they refused to do any kind of prosecution because they know they can't. They refuse to, or pass a sentence, I should say. They refuse to pass a sentence. They can't pass a sentence. And what's that? Puck said last year Sweden was paying them to leave. Yes, that's right. I read that article. I remember reading that. Correct. They were offering a bonus to go back to where you came from. They give you some money to set you up. I don't know if anybody took them up on that. NBC News article, Justice Department drops the classified documents case against Trump. It had nowhere to go. It had nowhere to go. He had not actually broken any laws. Biden was more guilty of it. He had stuff going back more than 30 years. Who knows what was in that pile? Stacked up in his garage. Justice Department on Wednesday moved to drop its appeal of a federal court order dismissing the criminal charges against President Trump's former co-defendants in the classified documents case, which would effectively end the case. Then, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland had cited the pending appeal as the reason why he would not publicly release special counsel Jack Smith's report on the criminal case that he had brought against Trump, saying it could impact the due process rights of the co-defendants. The Justice Department's motion to the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals to drop the appeal was filed by Hayden O'Brien. O'Brien was named interim U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida this week, the Miami Herald has reported. In a separate move Wednesday, the new acting U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C. moved to dismiss a case against another Trump ally, former Republican Representative Jeff Fortenberry of Nebraska. Throwing them all out. That really leaves, because I'm pretty sure if Alvin Bragg's case, or the so-called hush money case, which doesn't even really fit. It's not hush money. It's a non-disclosure agreement, and it is not illegal. I'm pretty sure that'll get appealed. And that only leaves the case in Fulton County, Georgia. But Fani Willis has been thrown off the case. The case has been embarrassed into the ground. Fani Willis has been thrown off. Her special investigator has been thrown off and publicly humiliated in court when Fani said that his Willie man didn't work properly. In open court, you embarrass the guy, you're cheating. Or, well, she's the fornicator. He's the adulterer because he was married. She wasn't. But she shouldn't have messed with no married man. And then you're going to make fun of his twigs and berries in court. Incredible. Dan says, if I make the shirt with your phrase, it's cheaper to deport them than to support them, I'll be sure to send you one. Oh, come on, Dan. Don't copy my ideas. JJ said perchance Sweden should reconsider its involvement in the EU if it was forced upon them by mandate. They should. Everybody should. The EU is a bad idea. All people said Denmark is shipping out its mass migration, and the migrants are furious at the idea of having to return to terry nations of origin and get jobs and not live as parasites off of Westerners. Well, they hate us. Oh, thank you, all people. All people's talking about my my little off-the-cuff catchphrasing there. Yeah, I should. I've got a few things I could put on a T-shirt. I just don't know if I want to bother. Would anybody even buy them? I see these guys all the time on all these YouTube channels all over the place, and they have T-shirts and coffee mugs and all kinds of junk. And I'm like, does anybody ever actually buy any of that stuff? And I know one guy who did it, and he's a guy who has a comic book channel. Okay, he did like his logo on mugs and things, and he told me kind of off the record, he only ever sold one mug. one mug. One mug. Joe says open borders for Israel. That's what got them into trouble in the first place. No more open borders. Close those borders. Close the borders. No more melting pot. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Unbelievable. Oh, do I want to do this one first? I got a couple. I'm stacked with stories because it's all behind because so much happens, and I don't have the. Yeah, Kimberly says they all hate us, yet they all want to be here. Yeah, because they all want a handout. It's not like in the old days when people came here for to have a chance at a better life. No, they're coming here to be babysat. I wanted to say something about Ozempic. Okay. And I also wanted to say something about JFK, but time running out and I got to be picky. But I've been going after pharmaceutical stuff a lot lately here. And I'm glad to see, I'm not a huge fan of RFK Jr., but I do like his stance on the pharmaceutical industry and stuff like that. Now, this CNN article here, okay? FDA approves Ozempic to reduce the risks from chronic kidney disease in diabetes patients, all right? So now it says here, I'm not going to read the whole article, but I want to make a point real quick because I've talked about Ozempic before, and I remembered something about it when I read this. It says Ozempic, the blockbuster GLP-1 drug that was originally approved to treat type 2 diabetes, has now also been approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to reduce certain risks associated with chronic kidney disease. Okay? So now they're going to allow for this drug to also be given to people who have kidney problems. It's just gotten authorization from the FDA. FDA gave them a green light. Oh yeah, you can start selling this to people who have kidney problems. Let's go to Ozempic. This is what I remembered. Okay, let's jump from that and read Ozempic's side effects, because this is the first thing that popped into my head because I've read this before on this channel. Okay, it's coming up here, and this is going to be cited by drugs.com, www.drugs.com, drug facts. Ozempic, side effects, nausea, diarrhea, constipation. How do you have diarrhea and constipation? God, that'd be a nightmare. Fatigue, dizziness, abdominal pain, bloating, burping, heartburn, loss of appetite, blurred vision, injection site reaction, hypoglycemia, allergic reactions, gallstones, tachycardia, pancreatitis, and what's that last one? Kidney damage that could result in death. So you've got a drug that one of their main side effects is kidney damage. And as you're aware, if your liver or kidney are damaged, that could end your life. That's life-threatening. And you just approved that drug for use in kidney patients. Did I miss something? Is it just me? Is it just me? Am I crazy? Maybe I'm just I've got the foil hat on for too long. Maybe I missed something here. Maybe I missed something. Oh my God. I love it. Joe Doe says welfare has become a career choice. For many, it is. Tuck says they have bought a couple of things to support channels, but don't often have the spare money. I have morale patches from 2 channels. To be honest, I'd often rather mail cash. I completely understand. And JJ says, I bet RFK has something to say about Ozempic. Sure he does. Sure he does. Joe says he heard that Ozempic destroys your stomach. Well, that would they tell you bloating, burping, and gas are side effects. Isn't that great? Sit there, burp and fart all day, and have a rumbly tummy, and a cross between one day it's constipation and the next day you got explosive diarrhea. What a life! What a life! We gotta sing a jingle for Ozempic. Ozempic, yeah, baby. JJ says, "Oh joy! I guess they're trying to ensure more clientele for dialysis centers." Yeah, and I think the maximum life expectancy on dialysis is 8 years, right? You won't last long. Joe says, Minnes, Min, Minneapoliston mayor says he will resist deportation and illegals are our neighbors. I bet none of them live next to him. I bet he doesn't have any living in his yard like we've seen in some places. I bet he doesn't. I bet there's no tents on the sidewalk in front of his house. But I wanted to throw that out there. We'll get back to JFK tomorrow because they've been giving him a really hard time. And again, the Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are the 2 that have been laying into him the hardest. But they're also the ones that have received the most money for their campaigns through funding coming from pharmaceutical lobbyists. And number 1 Marvel fan is here. He says going to watch it on the rewind. But with that, we are at the top of the hour. So I will go ahead and start signing off. Miss Kitty stayed with me the whole time. I will go ahead and start signing off. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk, and Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta, and Rumble, Coffee Talk 2, and that's the number 2. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation. and we will catch you again